I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. And that is the full quote from the book Dune by Frank Herbert. And the only part of that I have remembered until researching it this morning is fear is the mind killer. Let's say that again clearer. Fear is the mind killer. And this topic today has been hard for me to get started because there's just so much to say. I have rewritten, I've had, I'm going to start like this, I'm going to say that in showering, trying to sleep, driving, all kinds of things. And so I'm just going to jump in and tell you what today is all about and see where we go. I may have to pause, so you may see me here, and then you may see me here. And I hope that's okay. I'm not afraid. Are you? Okay, so today's topic is about how fear can hold us back from success in this business, and how going ahead, feeling the fear and doing it anyway, which is another of my favorite quotes, can grow us. One of the things I love, love, love about self-employment, being an entrepreneur, is how we can't help but grow, and not just grow in a business sense, but grow inside. My family's habit of origin, I'll say, was fear of being broke, fear of getting hurt, a fear of being wrong, fear of making mistakes, um, fear of pain, on and on and on. And I will say that by being self employed for the last 40 years, I have made peace with that fear of being broke most of the time. And how it would show up for me a lot is in the business every year when it got slow, I would think, this is it. This is the day. This is the year. I'm not going to make it. I'm going to have to go get a real job. Or when I would process what I was afraid of, which I have done in some different self help classes and different things, is okay, so I'm afraid I'm not X, getting bookings or making a client happy, or finish something on time, finishing something on time. I'd say that again. And so as I process, okay, what is the real core fear in that? I would go from, if this happens, then I'm going to be not earning income. I'm going to lose money. And if I lose money, eventually I'm going to go broke. And if I go broke, I'm going to lose my house. And when I lose my house, then I'm going to be, it was always, and I'm not sure if this is politically correct anymore, but end up a bag lady. And then I was processing this in a conference once with a one-on-one little breakout group. And the next question about, and I'm going to teach you this technique, but then after the fear of being a bag lady, then the next question is like, okay, and then what? And what I realized is I would handle it, and I would find a shopping cart, I would find a community, I would find ways to make it happen where I'm okay no matter what. So the first thing to do is to challenge what it is that comes up when we're wanting to do something that feels pretty uncomfortable. So I'm going to take a breath here and just let it be okay that I'm kind of just blah, throwing this all out to you, because there's just so much. What I want the core of this one-way conversation, me to you, to be, and actually me to me in my own ears, is about how challenging our fears that keep us from doing things that could help our businesses is the path to success. I've found over and over and over again that people who, let's say, we're talking about possibly me being their business coach, and they end up, even though it all looks like the right decision, they don't pull the trigger because they're afraid. And we often talk about what they're afraid of. And I'm going to explore that a little bit more in a sec. But so I kind of want to focus around some of that. But I also want to give you tools to, when fear comes up in any situation, you can either maybe have a friend and you do it with each other, or do it with yourself. Journal. Sometimes, by the way, a great way to journal is to use your right hand. This is my right, and write down the question, and then use your left hand to answer it. Because what happens is if you're right-handed. If you're left-handed, do it the opposite. When you're writing out your answer with your non-dominant hand, the answers get really simple and very real. So that's a little technique. I would say just go ahead and do it with your right hand, or speak it. Or this is a speaker, can you tell? Speak it out loud, or speak it in a recording. Make a Zoom, make your own private Zoom, and ask yourself these questions. So, okay, I'm still in a circling, but hopefully you're hearing things that will connect the dots. And see, that's my fear coming through, that everything I want to have coming through in this recording, I may miss something, but I'm just going to trust that whatever you need to hear, you're going to hear. Whatever I need to communicate, I mean, a lot of you listen, so I trust that there'll be pieces of this that grab you, that make sense to you. So, okay. So, a couple of books that made a big difference for me. And if you really want to have a huge breakthrough about fear in any capacity, not just business, is to read the book Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And that's by Susan Jeffers. She just rocked my world in reading that book, because so I had almost like a constant little voice in my head that was always kind of terrorizing me with fears. And the mantra that I took from this book is, I'll handle it. So if I think, I'll use an example. I used to snow ski. I snow skiing for over 20 years. Every year I would go from sunny Southern California to somewhere for a week or two during snow season, maybe 3 if you combine it, and ski. At the same time, I spent as much energy trying not to fall as I did flying down the mountain having fun. And I am a cautious person physically. I did not grow up with in a family where we did athletic things. I did bike ride and what's that thing you put on your feet? Roller skate. But nothing else that could create pain or injury, or the D word. Got it. No, I don't want to die. So I always skied hand in hand with the fear of falling and hurting myself. And then I read that book, and I distinctly remember the moment on the slope when that mantra kicked in, where it's like, oh, what if I fall? I'll handle it. What if I get injured? I'll handle it. What if I get stuck up here and it takes me all day to get down? I'll handle it. Another time I was on vacation, and my then boyfriend and I were driving. I think we might have been in Utah, but we were driving somewhere and we were low on gas, and it was clear we were far, far from a gas station. And we both started to get really nervous. And then I'll handle it kicked in. And I said, you know what? If we run out of gas here at night, we'll handle it. A car will come by. We'll sleep in the car. We'll hitchhike. Um, it was pre-cell phone, so it wasn't like, oh, I'll call AAA. But having that mantra to calm myself, whatever happens, I'll handle it, has made a huge difference in my life. And and that came from that book. So that's one reason I love to read, is because life can change, things can change just from the right book at the right time. Whew, running out of breath. Okay, so a book I read recently is called The Subtle Art of Not Giving an Fuck. I don't want to say it out loud just because some people, just to be mindful of not throwing around a lot of profanity in this show. And I don't have any quotes from that. Maybe I'll pause and pull them up in a little bit, because I did write down some. But that book had great tips for, not caring about results, like detaching. It basically was about detaching from the outcome of things and just letting life happen, making choices, taking risks. So, yeah, that's the core. And I'm going to pause for 1 sec just to take a breath and see where I'm going to go next. Okay, here I am again. So, something I just learned about recently is that we have a nerve that runs from the back of our head down our body to, think about the solar plexus, so just above our belly. And that's where all the feelings happen. And I saw this chart that showed the body, and there were pictures of, here's what your body inside, I think it was a heat scan, looks like when you're happy, when you're excited, when you're worried, when you're afraid, when you're making love, when you're learning. And different parts of that vagus nerve, not like Las Vegas, but I think it's VAGUS, I could be wrong on that, or vagal. The so the feelings actually have these physical components, and they're all different depending on what we're feeling. But where does the feeling come from? And this is the important thing. And this is like probably every book on this topic, or personal growth, or courage, or well, anyway, lots of books talk about this. But it comes first from a thought. So if I think this podcast has to be perfect and say everything in the world about dealing with fear, then I start having a feeling if I'm attached to that thought. Like I might have that thought and I'm not even aware I'm thinking it. But then I get that thought and then I get a feeling somewhere in my body. Now, if I'm on a fear track, It's going to happen for me right about here. Yeesh. And that part connects with my, I'm a recovering perfectionist. I've learned it's okay to be excellent, and there's no such thing as perfection. And it's okay to be average, and it's okay to make mistakes. Those are challenging concepts for me, but I'm working on that. So if I get that fear reaction in here because of my thoughts, then I can either act or not act because of that, or I can and have created the habit of challenging that feeling. So, in the example of, oh, I need to, have this podcast episode, all of them be perfect. I need to speak perfectly. If I post this as a video on Zoom, I'm sorry, on YouTube, oops, mistake. Uh, I need to edit out all the glitches and things. And I'm learning to be like, oh, okay, I'm going to share what comes to me, and I'm going to trust that it works. And even if it doesn't, who cares? This is um, one of my, okay, I'm babbling, but I think this is important to share. One of the sort of other mantras that has calmed me down over the years, and I think I created this during the wedding business era, because everything seemed like the house was on fire. And um, so if I got that fear coming up, that part would start in my stomach and kind of bubble up. Is to say to myself, okay, it's not brain surgery. No one's going to die from this. And it just was a habit. It's still a habit for me to calm myself if I'm feeling something that triggers that certain kind of emotional reaction. So if you've listened to this show uh, enough, you might have heard that in 2014 I had brain surgery. I had a benign tumor in my sinus, and that they couldn't get all of it in other things they tried. So eventually that I had a wee bit of, but it really wasn't wee, bit of brain surgery. And so when I first was talking to my wonderful doctor, who, by the way, used to be a highly paid photographer and decided to go to med school when he was filming Doctors Without Borders surgeries, Doctors Without Borders surgeries, I mean. Anyway, so we were the perfect match. I'm going to pause. I have to make a little note here. One sec. Okay, I'm back because that's a good one. I didn't want to forget it, and I didn't want to hold it in my mind while I'm trying to speak to you about something else. Okay, so the first time after, I don't know if, well, anyway, there was a point where I was in his office and I was getting results from a biopsy that I had with him after a surgery. Anyway, I'm not going to go into too many details, but he told me the results and they were very scary. And then, as my habit happens, I took a breath and said, okay, well, it's not brain surgery. And then we looked at each other. And he said, actually, Lucy, it is. And the life-changing moment for that was, and I would handle it. There was that you know, that mantra of mine. And I did. And I'm here 8 years later, after 4 years that all started in 2010, of all kinds of things that were really scary and not fun at all. And there's still always the pending, is it going to come back? But I handled it. Oh, I forgot to finish about skiing. So I was skiing down a mountain after I was in this habit of I'll handle it, I'll handle it, I'll handle it. And my mind was like, oh no, what if you crush your tips? You go flying over that ridge and you die. And I thought, okay, I'll handle that. So anyway, so I'm gifting you that and hoping that you will. First of all, although Susan Jeffers passed away in 2012, she does have a website. So if you go to either Google Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, or look for a website that's super Susan Jeffers, I think you'll connect there, and then you can find that book. I think I'm going to download the audio and listen to it in my car. Uh, I just finished another really great audiobook that I read in my car. So that's a good one. But I like books like that. I like to read, like 8 or 10 pages in the morning, underline, then pick it up the next morning, read the underlines, and then continue. That's how I get a lot out of books. So, okay, what did I write down? You might want to say. So, when something is happening and we make a decision, let's say you decide you're going to invest in coaching and you're going to, and or open a studio or do something that is pretty scary where the exact outcome is unknown. What happens is things will show up for us after we make that decision. This is something so core in my teaching and my understanding about how life works. I don't know if you have had that experience, but if you think back, like let's say you suddenly find out you're pregnant. I imagine, which I did not have the privilege of being a mother, so I don't remember that, but I'm sure it's pretty scary. And especially a lot of times people find that they're with child and they're not in the financial position that they wish they were. Some people are able to plan it out, save, live in the house they want, be totally ready. A lot of people are not. But what I've heard is that when that happens, things start showing up. A new job opportunity, someone gives you a beautiful crib, you know, lots and lots of things. And also physically, the body, I understand for someone, um, who is growing a human inside of them, that chemicals, all kinds of things um, happen in our bodies and after the birth as well to make us capable of doing what we couldn't do on just a day when we're not, you know, incubating a new human being. So trusting that things are going to show up. Now, I don't know if those, all of the things are that once we've made that decision, then we're on alert for, the possibilities. And suddenly, like when I was wanting to buy a red car, then I saw red cars everywhere. So I'm not sure if it's that or it's actually some law of the universe, angels, or just our awareness. But back to the back to my issue with the growth. I had during that 4 year period, and especially in the thick of some of the scariest parts, people showed up, things showed up, coincidences, magic. The way that my doctor became my doctor, I was supposed to use his colleague. He was referred to me by a regular ENT. He's a surgeon, not him, but the colleague. But the colleague was in, I don't know, Africa for a month or something. So I was assigned Dr. Bergeron. And honestly, I could not have done it without him. He was the kindest, most caring, and most skilled doctor, and used to be a photographer. So we had a special friendship. We still do, as I continue to, get MRIs and such. So, anywho, I feel like some people are thinking either, hey, get to the part about business, or B, bad things are going to happen. I can't handle it. I'm not going to do it. Just let me out of here. I don't know. I just had a little sense of, it's a hard topic to talk about. So, okay, I did the vagus nerve. All right. So let's talk about business. If you make a decision that you're going to create something, you're going to create a profitable business. You have set yourself up for a graduate class in conquering fear and taking risks. And some of those fears are fear of loss. So let's say you invest a lot and it doesn't pan out, there's a loss of money. Some of it might be a physical consequence. Like in business, I can't quite think of it other than, carrying cameras, running around is exhausting. But the core, all fear is fear of feeling, or let's say 90%. Of course, if a tiger's running at us, that vagus nerve that creates a certain kind of fear, I think to me, it's like right here that tells us to run or hide or get your bow and arrow or something. That's a healthy fear. Like caution, when we're looking at the business aspect, that is a healthy brand of fear, is looking at all the potentials when you're taking a risk. What I would love to kind of install in your hard drive is the fear of loss if you don't do something. And one of the things, when I look back on my full-time career, I was not as comfortable hiring people to help me because of the fear of the loss of the money and that it wouldn't come back to me. And the truth is, because, we all have our strengths and we all have our needs, and time is limited unless we hire people to help us. So if I could, flip back a while and change, like some TV shows that are on where people go back in time and change things, what I would change was investing in mentors and more people to help me actually do the things that are not my strong suit or that don't make me the most money. Now with editing, if I were still full-time with portraits, I would absolutely hire somebody to do a lot of my editing. I might hold on to the wall portrait. You can see these around. I might hold on to that finalization. Is that a word? The refinement of the wall portraits so that it has that full artist touch to it. But I would let other people spend the 10, 12 hours a week or more at the computer editing. I'm going to break one more time so I can get clear on where I was going with that. One sec. Okay, I'm back. Now, the reason I'm doing the pausing is that in case you haven't discovered this, I'm now posting the podcasts on my YouTube channel, The Profitable Photographer. And if you're listening to this rather than watching it, you can know that you can like pull me up on your television or your phone and watch this episode. So I'm trying to be a little more mindful, um, so that I can post the video and not have an editor have to spend an hour cleaning everything up. And I'm allowing for oopsies. So enjoy them. All right. So I mentioned fear of loss. Loss can be physical, fear of pain. Um, but what I was starting to get into is almost all fear is a fear of feeling something. And sure, I used to be afraid to go to the dentist, like huge phobic fear. Because I was traumatized by a doctor that I think should have been prosecuted when I was young. Not going into that. Um, but of course, the fear of pain, the fear of discomfort. Um, but the counter side of that, as I began to be a grown up, is the fear of what will happen if I don't take care of my teeth. And, that's a long term consequence. So now um, I just do like some meditation. And what I've learned is if you're interested in this vagus nerve, there are a lot of techniques now that people are sharing that we've probably been doing, since the dawn of humankind. But there are specific things that we can do. Self hypnosis. Before that surgery, I listened to tapes that were preparing for surgery, self hypnosis tapes. Um, I have this little meditation where I spin colors in my chakras, and I use that when I'm in an MRI machine because that's kind of scary and uncomfortable. And I didn't realize what I've done is impact that nerve. Anyway, but the feeling, I think more people are afraid of either feeling embarrassed, fear of being judged, fear of their own self criticism. I think, I'd raise my hand and say that has been a biggie for me. I'm pretty hard on myself. I'm better. But in the course of my lifetime, my inner critic was pretty mean. And um, I've learned to have a chat and to change my thinking on things so that then I change the feeling. Um, Embarrassment, like besides, I guess they say, well, I'm not sure if it's the number one or number two, but right up there is fear of public speaking. How can that be? We learned to speak. We were celebrated when we said our first word and our first sentence, but there's something in us that, unless you grew up in a situation like I did, where my pops was a preacher and I was in front of people a lot, and I saw that he didn't die from it, or whatever it is, that fear, I don't fully understand um, why we're so afraid. And it has to come back to fear of getting it wrong, fear of being embarrassed, fear of being judged. And if we can let that go, and especially, as photographers, we have to step out in courage. We have to pick up that phone. Well, you don't have to, but I think if you want to be wildly successful and bring in thousands of dollars per client, or um, even if you're doing something that's like a volume business, um, the telephone and picking up the phone and having a conversation, however it goes, is is important. And with in my most of my life, the telephone was everyone's friend. But now with the internet, with texting and everything else that we can do, emails, people have gotten out of the habit, and there's so much spam that they won't even pick up the phone unless they know the person. And when I'm coaching people, the core beginning point of creating a really great sale with in-person sales, which I talk a lot about, starts with the telephone. So, um, anywho, so back to that, like that self-judgment of getting it wrong. Now, what if you could learn to be at ease about getting it wrong and have a fun conversation in your head with yourself about all of that? How much freedom would you have? What else would you do in life if you weren't afraid that you were going to beat yourself up over it? Or if you weren't afraid of someone rejecting you, or if you weren't afraid of someone judging you. That is a big one that has come up as I process with my clients and with my friends. You know, the full extent of fear that keeps them from doing something. And I'll tell you more about that in a bit. So stay tuned. Um, what if, like, skateboarders? I see them like falling all the time, and I they just are, I guess, just, I'm sure if they bruise, if they break something, sure, they don't like it, but they're not so afraid of it that then they don't do what brings them joy. And that's what I really want you to be thinking about, is if you have a desire, if you have a burning desire to be successful, or photograph something, or travel somewhere to, let's say you want to go to Africa and photograph orphans somewhere. If your heart is all in for it, then A, trust that you'll work out the details, and B, that no matter what happens, it's going to be okay. Even if it's a great big disaster from, what you planned to have happen or hoped would happen, you learned from it. You created some skills. You possibly discovered what not to do. Like my first trip to Europe, my girlfriend and I bought those urban backpacks and spent 6 months trying to decide how to pack it so we had everything we needed but nothing extra. And we did all kinds of things that were um, that I would do differently and that I have done differently in the many times I've been back traveling Europe, even by myself. So the 5 weeks in Europe had lots of joys and many things that were life lessons. And people that are afraid to travel or afraid to travel alone because things might not go well are missing out on, okay, if they don't, then next time you'll do it better. Um, Little note, if you're traveling in Europe, don't rent the car size that you think you'd like. Rent one size smaller, and don't always trust the GPS to take you down a road that you can actually get through with the car size you have. And that's a story for another time about the crazy experience in a little town in France, and how I almost scraped the whole side of my car and such. I mean, I wish I'd had it in video because the whole thing was hilarious. Anyway, what I learned from that, that A, be careful with those GPS in Europe, and B, don't get the bigger car, even though it's more comfortable. Okay, I was down a bunny trail. Let me see if I can reel back. Um, so let's say you decide you're going to make an investment in education. And I have done that. I've invested quite a bit in education, not just photography, although, if we added up, I'm sure I've invested 100,000 or more over the 40 years. But I've made a full-time living. So the investment was worth it. And I've invested quite a bit in learning how to be a coach, grow a coaching business, create a podcast, all of that. My last big investment, and I'm talking big, it was kind of a waste, technically. It was a year-long program. There were supposed to be 4 in-person events, which I always gain a lot from. One was in Europe, that did not Europe, Hawaii, their direction. And then COVID hit just after I invested in this, right before the next get together was planned. But I do not consider it actually a waste because I learned a lot about everything I could do to grow my coaching business. But I also learned the things I don't need to do or want to do. And, I learned I don't want to be $1 million a year business mentor, coach, teacher. I don't want to put the effort there. I want to put the effort into what my heart's calling is. And the podcast, that was a big risk. That was a big investment to get help putting this together. And on a monthly basis, it's still an investment. And the thought was, well, what if financially it's money going out and not a return on that? Well, the action of this, the sharing with you, the speaking and chatting and making friends with people I've never met before, and getting to spend time in these interviews with people that I absolutely love. There's so much reward in that is not a direct financial reward, but it's priceless. So with everything that we choose to do, and I'll say this a lot with my coaching, is people get a lot of inner change. We look at those things that hold us back. We confront, like, there's a big dose of I guess you'd say life coaching, as I'm coaching my clients on how to sell, how to market, how to handle difficult clients, how to set up their sales room, how to price themselves, all the things that are officially business coaching. None of that would work if those inner changes are not brought to light, and some of them healed, some of them strengthened, some of it is our positives. And in coaching, we can get better at what we're already strong in. So I guess that was a little bit of a shameless, or not so shameless plug. This is my show. I would love to coach you. And at the same time, I love that this podcast is, I'm assuming, impacting people in the worldwide audience. And that's enough for me. And what happens in my business, because you get to know me, you get to know my heart, you get to know my expertise, that is all bonus. But if I had not done this because I was afraid it wouldn't go well, or afraid to just babble or say stupid things or make a mistake or have nobody listen or all the things, then it would have been a loss to me, and it would have been a loss to you all listeners, you particularly, because there's only one of you listening in your world, or it could be two. So the flip side, and I'm going to get into this thing now that I've been promising you, but the flip side of the negative what if is, but what if it goes well? What if you learn from it? What if you invest in something like coaching And like with my client Erin Bonilla, it goes from um, doing things in the hundreds and growing a general business to all the steps that, I didn't teach her everything, but 5 years into her dream as a pet studio, she's created two very large, very busy pet studios, bringing in 1.5 million in the year. What if that happens? Because you step out in faith. And she really, most people don't have just a pile of cash lying around to invest in anything that is connected to the business. But when you take a risk because you feel it in your heart that it's right for you, then A, things start opening up, and B, there's something about making an investment, just like with our photography clients, that compels you to do the work. When I invested in that year-long group coaching program that was big investment, then I got on those calls. I flew to Hawaii. I the 3-day conferences that went from being in person to online, I blocked off time because I had paid for this. So this okay. So now I'm gonna tell you that secret trick that I do with people all the time. So the first thing is to ask yourself what you're afraid of. And then to keep looking at that thing and like, why would that be bad? Or so what? And then the next thing that comes up, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. So let me see if I can come up with, okay, I'm going to pause one more time. I'm going to see what I can do to get a good example. So for those of you who are online, you'll see a little glitch on YouTube. You won't hear much difference if you're listening to this recording. One sec. Hello again. All right. So let's say you're thinking of opening a studio and you found one that seems like it could be a really good fit. Let's say, like, this is one of my clients. She was looking at a studio downtown, and her town is the perfect place to have a storefront studio because I don't know, maybe there's 50, 60,000 people. And so downtown is where people go a lot. And so we took a look at the location, the size of it, the price of it, and so forth. And so, anyway, but this is about you, not her journey. Okay, so so you figured it out and you're thinking of it, but then all of a sudden you're like terrified. So then the question is, what are you afraid of? In most cases, it might be that I'm not going to be a success and that I'm going to waste the money and the time. So then I would ask, okay, so if that should happen, then what? Well, I'd have to move my stuff back to my studio and, let's say, get a part-time job to help pay off the loans that I took out or go bankrupt. Okay. So if that were to happen, then what? What's so scary about that? Well, and so we go step by step. My husband would be disappointed in me. We'd have an argument. So you keep challenging, like, okay, my husband's disappointed in your husband's disappointed in you. Okay, so what? So then what? Okay, well, then we'd talk about it and we'd strategize and we'd figure out what to do next. So if you keep walking it back, like so many times I find uh, it may come back to being embarrassed. I've heard that a lot. I would be really embarrassed if I try this and it doesn't work. Um, I just had a memory of like this really big, early, stupid thing that I did and how much I learned from it. So I'll tell you in just a sec, but it could be embarrassing. um, so exploring, like, okay, why is why is being embarrassed such a big deal? So, okay, well, because I don't like how that feels. Okay, so what do you do with that? You take a breath, you feel it, feel that, feel that. Well, actually, feel what you're feeling, and then change your thoughts and say to yourself, it's okay. It's fine. No, but well, nobody died. And even the truth is, everybody does. So I hope I explained that right, that you just keep challenging back, back, back. And often it will come back to, then I'll feel bad about myself. And so if you create the tools to um, feel good about yourself, celebrate yourself, you know, um, look at what you learned. So let's say you opened a studio and it didn't work out. Somebody that's really committed to making their photography business is going to take all of what they experienced and work with that to have it propel them to whatever's next. Maybe what they learned is they really don't like keeping office hours, or they actually wanted to be in their home, or they want to like um Erica Dorf. She's a pet photographer on, and I've interviewed her twice on this show. She, I don't know when she decided to stop photographing where she lived, or maybe I do if I listen to her story again, or have have coffee with her when I see her again. But she decided to live on the road for 3 months and photograph pets and make a living, not working where she lived, but traveling and then going home and relaxing and playing the ukulele, or the right word is ukulele, teaching it. Um, so if she had opened a studio, and I think if you go back and listen, I think she did, and it was not satisfying for her. So every journey, I mean, life and the path of our career and the path of life in general, we fall in love, we have our hearts broken, or we break someone else's heart, we have children, then they grow up to be annoying little brats, or or in my case, I made decisions and choices in relationships that didn't end up resulting in being a parent. And as you can see from the pictures back here, i'm a I'm a kid fan. um, these are clients' work. It's not my family. Um, Here's one of my family. So that's my sister. And that is my great niece, who is actually a mother now. And she's working out all those things I just talked about. So, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. Fear is the mind killer. What I always get from that, from the Dune books, which I loved, and I did not love the movie other than the visuals, because those books are so rich in philosophy, and there just wasn't time, or they just didn't delve into it as much. But blah 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 blah. Just talking. Oh, okay, where was I? So what I took from that is that fear, and just being like, I'm afraid, so therefore I'm not going to do this, paralyzes us. It steals our power. I think that is the core, is don't let the fact that you're afraid or that you might be afraid stop you from going in action. I love the quote. Um, okay, like, I'm afraid to do this because what if I fail? And the person's response is, oh, my dear, but what if you fly? And I want you all to fly, and I want you all to grow and learn and expand and have, like, I have so much more life confidence because what I learned by taking risks in my business and what I learned when I saw that I was not taking a risk and confronting the fear and seeing that sometimes it didn't go perfectly, but I learned from it. I had a wonderful coaching client who, great photographer, had a full-time job. And what we learned at the end of his 6-month program, where he learned how to sell and market and get samples and, what the job entails, he realized he loved his job for money and, spending his professional time, and that he would focus on being a fine artist with his photography. So we don't always have to make a living in photography, but it's good to explore the possibilities so what it might take. Some people, they want to sell their work, but they do not want to run a business. So, like, let's say you, I'm going all in. I'm hiring a coach, getting professional equipment. I'm going to learn how to market, and you do all those things, and you realize, I don't like all of those things. I only like doing the photography part. Great. So find someone to hire you, or find a way to get your work out in the world. um, like, if you still want to make a living at it, then there are lots of businesses that would love to have a skilled photographer that isn't someone that wants to sell or wants to market. Um, Now, I will say, learning to do those things is going to grow you, but it's your life, my dears, and letting it unfold like a kaleidoscope. We look through here, and the colors keep changing, and everything leads to something else, leads to something else, leads to something else. So I want you to celebrate where you are right now. And I want you to think about a fear, carry it to the end, and then flip it. Like, one of the common things that I encounter is people who are doing a lot of the shoot and share photography. And because they're very good photographers and super nice people, they're getting a lot of work, almost too much work, or in some cases, too much work for the money. But it's really scary for them to switch to in-person sales because it's the what ifs. What if people won't book me at that? What if I go broke? What if, what if, what if? And so, one particular client, we took her through the other side. What if you have a lot more fun with your clients? What if people are happy to invest thousands in your work? What if you have a city full of your wall art that you've created for people, and it brings them joy every single day? What if, what if, what if? Can You can take that in the positive. So I think that's all I have to say for now. I guess I did okay in squeezing out of my brain just as much as I can think of right now. And I hope this helps you. It's a biggie, and it is like learning to manage this area just has so many positive consequences in our lives, in our relationships. You know, who could ever fall in love if they let the fear of being hurt stop them? Who could ever have a family? Who could ever have a career, travel, buy a house? Um, you know, buy, I don't know, your first teddy bear. I don't know. We go hand in hand in life. And of course, if there's a tiger changing you, I'll say that one more time. If there's a tiger chasing you, do run. You know, there are reasonable things to let the fear create action for sure. But if you take a solid look at the things that are like, okay, and this is the last thing I'm going to say. Here's a big potential, and there's fear of a small consequence. So you want to weigh that. So if you're afraid of people judging you, like, who is she to want to be successful and charge a lot of money? Be an entrepreneur. So there are people who will feel that about you potentially when you decide to, shine. So here's the I'm going to shine. And down here's some people may criticize me for that. It's a risk reward. The rewards are huge. The risks, the consequences, even the worst that you could think of somebody not wanting to be your friend, say, because you're successful now and they think I don't know, think you're all that. Well, living the life of your dreams, earning great money, serving the world with your talents, that's a big reward. And the risk is, the potential loss is pretty small. Okay, so that being said, if you would like a complimentary coaching strategy session, I have 8 available in the between this will come out. So we'll say December and January. So get in touch with me, email me, go to lucidumascoaching.com, send me a message, find me on Facebook and message me there. I love that. Because I would love, love, love to support you and help you turn those fears into fireworks of joy and success and confidence and all that good stuff. So, and I have one little thing, just a little and it's not on the topic. It's on the importance of what we do as photographers. So I was listening to, I think it's called Moth Radio on NPR on the radio. And because we recently had Veterans Day in America, there were stories told by veterans. And so this man told a story of combat and how they hid in the woods. And okay, I can't. Anyway, there was a conflict and he survived. And he was part of the team that went back to identify the Vietnamese that were killed and go through their pockets and try to find who they are and find ways to get those things back to their families. And he said, besides the name and basic ID and some money, the number one thing everybody had in their pockets was photographs. Think about that. Think about, okay, I'm going to tie it in. Think about if you let fear stop you from giving to the world with what you love to do. How many people will not have the blessing of the photographs you create, especially if you're family, kids, senior, even headshot photographer, because people save those weddings. What we can do for people is, I can't express any more deeply just how valuable it is, how incredible it is, how privileged we are. So hike up your jeans, strap on your courage, and confront those things and step out and know that you'll be okay no matter what happens. You'll handle it. Here's a big hug and kiss. And until next time, just sending you love. Bye.